Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. It's wonderful to be here, and I just sort of look around the room, and I feel very much at home. I mean, I'll just give you a couple. Helen was my professor at Bruges at the College of Europe, taught me the most important course at Bruges, which was basically the council, but a simulation game on the council. And our big simulation was on, get this, dentist drills. And I was excited, given the size of my teeth, that this would be an important... It was about the speed of dentist drills and how to harmonize the market in that. And when you get one Wallace, you always have to go for the second one. And of course, William was my supervisor at the LSE, warmly recommended by Olli, and also actually not directly recommended, but knowing that this is a good institution because Jorma Ollila had studied at the LSE. And the consequence of all of this is that I actually met Erkki Liikanen for the first time in my life. He probably doesn't remember it because he was a big commissioner, but I was shaking. But I was shaking in the office showing my thesis on differentiated integration, or basically on core Europe. And John Seisman, again, who is in the back, he figured in a book that we published together with Brent Nelson in 1992, which was a reader on European integration, and they had put in a piece, or we took the piece and paid the royalties, by piece by Zandholz and Seisman, which was in the Functionalist League. Now, it's clear that Helen has not seen me for a long while because she still thinks that I'm a raving federalist. In Finland and in the academic debate, Olli and I have written a couple of books together as well. There's always this debate about Olli being the functionalist and me the federalist. But looking at how things have developed in the past few years, I think Olli has been radicalized. And he's getting closer and closer to the Federalist School. And I've become much more moderate in my view, and I'm becoming more of a functionalist. I have no idea why this is, but that's just the way things have gone. May it as it be, what I would like to do in my 15 minutes is to try to give you 3 pointers on what I call a new core for Europe. The first pointer is going to be on the economics, the second pointer is going to be on politics, and the third one is going to be on institutions. And while I was listening to all the previous speakers, I was getting some new ideas and also noticing that, oh my God, I'm going to be saying exactly the same thing. But here we go, then the first observation on the economy. And I'm, by the way, Helen, I'm going to be the upbeat. You know, okay. I'm the eternal optimist and overly positive and the rest of it. So I'm actually going to be quite upbeat about the state of the European Union. First observation on the economy. I think this crisis has been fantastic. It's probably the best crisis that the European Union has ever had, because it has been a crisis...
Sounds to be enough now.
Because it is a crisis which has focused on real things. Remember that there are two issues at the core of Europe. They're probably not the most important, but which are fundamental. One is the euro, and the other one is Schengen and free movement. Both of those are under attack. Previously, our crises were on enlargement, our crises were on institutional infighting, and our crises were on budgetary frameworks. But this time around, I would argue, it's been a serious crisis. It's been a crisis of the public sector in Europe and elsewhere. It's been a crisis of the banking sector, and in many ways, it's also been what I would call a systemic crisis. I know there's this huge debate about austerity and or growth, or some people, including my PM, calls it growsterity. I find that debate extremely important, and I find it interesting as well, but may I just add one more element to it? There are 4 BRICS countries, and then the next 11. If you look at the economic figures of these 4 BRICS countries, they have both austerity, in other words, they fulfill the EMU criteria, but at the same time, they have growth. So I think those two things go hand in hand, and we're sometimes in the European debate simplifying things a little bit too much. One of the interesting things with this crisis is that, to be quite honest, we've been making it up as we've been going along. And the reason is the one that William mentioned in his intervention. We did not get economic union in 1992 to go hand in hand with monetary union. I don't blame political leaders for that. I, as always, blame financial ministries around Europe, because they were the ones who did not want to give economic policy coordination to a European body. And from a finance minister perspective, I do fully understand that. I don't think the track record on this crisis is bad. And may I add on to this one little anecdote on Olli. A lot of people say that Olli has had probably the two most difficult time-linked portfolios in the Commission, and I would fully agree. First, trying to navigate through enlargement, and especially the Turkish crisis went on, and secondly, having the portfolio of economics and monetary affairs. I remember saying immediately when he got it, he's like the new finance minister of Europe. And in many ways, a lot of people say, well, you know, that's... But as a matter of fact, he's much more than a finance minister of Europe. But for all of the people who are in the not coming from Finland, let me tell you that there's one job which is much, much more difficult. We don't know whether Olli is going to take it one day or not, and that is running the Centre Party. So he's very well prepared. He's very well prepared for whichever tasks he takes on after this. And I say this.
Can I comment?
Yes, Olli. Our speakers, are people allowed to comment in between? I'm getting a lot of this. No, Olli, please. Yeah, go ahead. I'm listening.
Yeah. Jorge Luis Borges, he's the author. He said once that for gentlemen only impossible missions are attractive enough. But there are limits.
I think the wonderful thing with Olli, when he speaks, you can actually print it straight out and put it in a dissertation, because it is very well thought out and thoughtful. In any case, what I want to say is that the track record on solving this crisis retrospectively is not bad. Look at what Olli and his gang has done. November 2008, a €2 billion stimulus package to prevent us from going down into a deep recession. 170 million member states themselves, 30 billion from the Commission. May 2010, I remember the days around actually the 9th of May, Mother's Day and Europe Day, a Greek package of 110 billion euros followed with a Portuguese package of 78 billion euros. November 2010, an Irish package of 85 billion euros plus original decisions on the ESM. December 2011, six-pack, which Olli alluded to, and then March 2012, Greek package number 2 combined with the involvement of the private sector, PSI, and I guess if you add all of that up, approximately 206 billion euros. Add on to that the package that was now done on the EFSF and the ESM. Yes, we've been playing the game as we go along, but retrospectively, I think we have survived. And we've done it quite well, and a lot of the thanks goes to the work that the Commission has done. Nevertheless, I would argue that we do have a problem, and that was mentioned by John Zeisman, and that is a problem of growth, because if we look at growth predicaments, and I'm sure Erkki will talk about them as well, for the next 5 to 7 years, Europe is looking at a good, optimistic view of 2% per annum, whereas the emerging markets, or what I would call actually the growing markets nowadays, are talking about 7%. So my message number one on the economy is that I actually think that the crisis has been well managed, and I haven't mentioned the European Central Bank here. I probably should, but then again I shouldn't, because I think they've done a fantastic job. And I think, secondly, that the worst is over. Yes, call me an optimist, but I think the fact that we've been doing this for 3.5 years has been fairly successful. Are we still going to hit some walls? Yes, we probably will, but the worst is over. Message number one then, worst is over and we've done fairly well. Then my second point today is on politics. And here my first observation is that we have quite a few different types of coalitions in the European Union nowadays. I think it's a waste of time to talk about founding states versus new states, North versus South, and certainly East versus West, or Protestant versus Catholic. I think the coalitions inside the European Union are very functional based. They depend on the area. Are you in the euro or not? Are you pro-single market or not? Are you a AAA country or not? So the divisions are completely new. Finland, for instance, and I'll get back to this in a second, I would argue has never had a more influential position in the European Union than it has today. Unfortunately, for the wrong reasons. And the wrong reason is not that we are a AAA country, but the fact that there are only 4 Euro countries that are AAA rated. We've never been as close to Germany in the European Union as we are right now, or to, for instance, the Netherlands. So you have new types of coalitions moving around. I know that people like Jean-Claude Piris are quite quick, and I do respect his legal analysis and expertise, to say that the problem started with enlargement. I beg to disagree with that, because a lot of the countries that are in the European Union right now are actually taking care of their economies better than many of the founding states, and on top of that are probably more pro-European than some of the founding states, without mentioning any today. I also think politically that Europe is turning inward, and I agree with Ali Babachan on that note. And I think this is a dangerous trait. William talked about it as well. We need to take perhaps the British post-World War II approach, be a little bit humble. I talked a few years back about a dignified foreign policy, DFP. People and Europe needs to understand that it is not the only game in town together with the United States anymore, that there are many more serious players around. I fully agree. I think Helen used the terms cosmopolitan and parochial. I've been using localists and globalists. And I think that the divide between the left and the right in Europe politically is not really there anymore. The right has become quite left, and the left has become quite right. I didn't mean to say that, but it actually sounded quite good. So and the basic argument here is that within every party in Europe, you have localists and globalists. Localists being people who are, for lack of a better term, anti-European, anti-Euro, anti-immigration, and anti-globalization. They are perhaps the true Finns of today. You find them in every party around Europe. And on the other hand, you have the globalists who are pro-European, pro-Euro, pro-immigration, and pro-globalization. I found the study from EVA, Matti Apunen is here, very interesting, came out last week, where the support for the European project in Finland has actually risen by 18% to an all-time high of 55%. At the same time, you have people who are pro-European, but can be a little bit critical. So we're clearly getting into a system politically in Finland and elsewhere where people are getting a love-hate relationship with the European Union. And my argument is that the more political the European Union gets, the more critical people are going to be about it. And that's completely natural. I mean, after all, who loves the national parliament or the national government or the local parliament or the local government? And the same trend is going to be seen, I think, in Europe. Politically, and this is my final point on the political side, I fully agree with Helen when she says that Europe needs a new story. Many of you made reference to the fact that Europe is originally a peace project. Yes. I don't know if I can put this in an eloquent way, but I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Europe was originally a political project, as William said, which used economic instruments. But if you look at the last few years when we've been engaged in this frenetic crisis management operation, it's actually become an economic project, and we're inventing political instruments for it. I mean, I don't know if I'm making sense, but it's sort of reversed the whole peace project. It's become much more, well, I don't care about this peace thing, but I'm really concerned about what's going on in my wallet. And the story of the European Union is about peace, prosperity, security, and stability. Just doesn't fly to the IT generation. It simply doesn't fly. And we talked about this actually in Lapland a lot with Olli and a few others, that Europe needs a new story, a new narrative. But that narrative cannot be invented. It cannot be about, let's bring the European Union closer to its citizens. I don't mean to point out the Commission here, but that whole project, you know, the 3 Ds and the rest of it, I mean, it was mumbo jumbo. It just, people, Jacques Delors put it well, you cannot fall in love with an internal market. I am in love with an internal market, but normal people cannot fall in love with an internal market. And so in that sense, we need a new narrative, but it needs to be true. And the only time that Europe has actually become very close to its citizens is right now, and that is because of the euro crisis. Now people in bars talk about Greece. Now people in bars talk about interest rates. Now people in bars talk about collateral. And that used to not be the case. So to a certain extent, Europe has become interesting, but perhaps for the wrong reasons. So my second message is that I think Europe, yes, it's nice that it's a peace project, but that is not enough anymore. We need a new narrative, as Helen put it. My third and final point then is on institutions, and here's where I get into the core debate, or debate on core Europe. Of course, institutionally, the European Union is based on three balances. The first one is the balance between member states. How much power does a member state have versus another member state, whether it's number of commissioners or weighting of votes or seats in the European Parliament. Second balance that the European Union has is the balance between the institutions. How much power does the Commission have? How much power does the European Council have? The Council, the European Parliament, etc. And the third balance is between these two. In other words, how much competence does the European Union have versus how much competence do the member states have? And this is the sort of tug of war that all of us are involved in. I think we have a new institutional balance, and I tried to frame this, and please tell me if this works. I think after this crisis we have, number one, a much, much stronger ECB. So a stronger ECB. Number two, and here's where I'm going to get some opposition, I hope, we have a weaker Commission. Number three, we have a messier Council and a European Council because of the power prerogatives, preparations of the 18 European Council crisis meetings, etc., etc. And then we have a more, fourthly, aggressive European Parliament. So we have a stronger European Central Bank, a weaker European Commission, a messier Council and European Council, and a more aggressive European Parliament. There's a big debate about community versus intergovernmental, but even as an academic, I cannot follow that debate anymore. I do not know what the community method means today. You remember what Monet said, nothing is possible without humans, nothing is lasting without institutions. Nowadays, I tend to think that nothing is possible without Sarkozy and Merkel, nothing is lasting without the Commission. I know it's a reversal of the community method, but that's where we stand right now. And I don't understand the difference between intergovernmental and community anymore because the institutions are in such a messy stage. I think that the whole agenda of the European Union is right now driven by economics, but by crisis management of economics. We do not talk enough about competitiveness or growth, but we talk a lot about stability. Perhaps that's in the nature of affairs. Do we then have a new core? I would argue, and this is the message that I want to make here, and again, I don't know if I can explain this well, but I'll try. Two observations. We have a new European core, which is the AAA rated Euro countries, and whatever that involves. To a certain extent, I would argue that in the future, we will have more and more what I would call meritocratic cores. Meritocratic cores. I tried to explain in a Bruges speech that the European monetary system right now is Darwinistic. I think in some debates this was understood as a description of a situation, not a promotion of an idea. But in some circles, I think it was mis-skewed. So I'll try again. We have a meritocratic core whereby you are in the core of Europe if you take care of your business in a proper way. Now, this might sound like a Protestant northerner or something like that. I don't know. But I don't think that this core is static. That you can actually come into this core and you can fly out of that core very fast if you don't take care of your business. Of course, I'm talking from a perspective of a small state, because for a big state, it's always much easier to stay in that core. I also think that an interesting reversal has happened, that the idea of core Europe should advance European integration. It should be centripetal and pull people along. But now we're going for a more permanent differentiation. I think the fiscal compact is an example of this. Yeah, we can go back and say that the UK took its decision in 1992, but the fact that they have now stayed outside the fiscal compact is a clear portrayal that others are willing to move ahead. Even though, as Olli would put it very correctly, it's only 5% of what the six-pack legislation gave you anyway. But the bottom line is that it is not going by the lowest common denominator. But there is a new phenomenon, and that is the non-Euro countries ganging up together and trying to slow down the process of European integration as much as they possibly can on the general working level. And I think we have to be very, very careful about that. So my message number 3 is we have a meritocratic core, but it is flexible. People will be going in and out from it. And to sum up then my 3 points today were, first of all, I think Europe will survive and we will have more economic integration. Secondly, the system will be messier and this will raise problems of legitimacy, and this is where federalism and elections come into play. And then thirdly, I think the system will be more meritocratic, but at the same time flexible. Whether this, Helen, is a finalité or not, I don't know, but I don't think I believe in finalités anymore. This is much more a process, and quite a fun one at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Erkki Liikon, please.